All right, let's go to Chapter 1, Preparation, and we're going to begin by talking about change and decision making. In this module, we're going to make the connection between what happens when people make a change and how that relates to the decision-making model in a sales environment. We're also going to establish a common language for best practices around this and define a process of stages of kind of how to help move a customer through stages from opening to close using a very logical process. Before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about our profession, sales competencies. We as sales professionals have a certain set of competencies that make us who we are and help us determine the level of success that we can achieve based on how good we are at those competencies. Just like a pitcher in professional baseball, when you measure their competency, it's kind of how fast that fastball goes, how accurate it is, how much a curveball curves. There's a certain level of competency in something. You know, a golfer, it's how consistently they execute something. A surgeon, how well they slice and dice you, right? An attorney, how well they slice and dice you. There's certain common competencies in every profession, and there are those in our profession. And so as we look at our profession and look at the core competencies, they fall in these categories of you got to know your industry and your products and your services is number one. You've got to be able to think and plan. You've got to be able to ask questions and create a collaborative dialogue. You've got to be able to listen and understand what's going on. You've got to be able to make the connection and propose and negotiate. And you've got to be able to use tools. Do you all use tools? I mean, you know, imagine trying to do your job without the tools you have. The best salespeople, if you can have the perfect salesperson, it would be someone who's got a 4.5 across all those competencies. But as you think about, Jeff, as you think about your salespeople and you think about where they are, could you picture one person being really good at 2 or 3 of those competencies and kind of average at maybe 2 or 3 others and maybe really good at a sixth? Yes. And then vice versa. You can see someone else who maybe has the exact opposite. And you'd say, man, how do I blend those 2 into one? How do I create that? Because I know I can get 20% more productivity from each person if I can get them to share and increase those competencies. These competencies are a direct correlation to how much money people make. The reason you want to improve each of these competencies is it will directly translate to your commission check. No ifs, ands, or buts. You know that, Jeff, right? You know it, Eric. You know that if people can do that, they're going to make more money. And that's why we're here today, is to look at these various competencies and say, how can we improve? Now, when you look at the average person, and what's an average person? An average is like the best of the worst of the best. So when you look at an average person, you say, you know what? Most of them are pretty good at the products and services and industry, right? Because that's we just burn that stuff into their heads. But if you really look at an average person, the one who's barely surviving, you know, they're probably surviving because they're kind of hovering around the bottom, you know, 2, 2.5, just acceptable, just good enough. And then the rest of us are somewhere in between those two. And so from your perspective, you got to say, where am I? And what I'd like you to do is think about these 6 competencies and say, where am I personally? And if there's 1 or 2 that I could develop and move from a 2 to a 4, or 3 to a 3.5, or 3 to a 4.5, if you can move 1 or 2 of those competencies up just enough, Brian, how much of an impact do you think moving 1 or 2 of those competencies from where you are and just bumping it up 1 to 1.5 points, how much of an impact do you think it would have on your commissions?
Double.
Would it be worth, for the next 6 weeks, for you to commit yourself an hour here and an hour there to fine-tune those competencies that you think would have the greatest impact on how much money you make? Would it be worth if you believed it would actually have that kind of impact? Now, do you think there's other people in this room who might be a little bit better at that competency, that if we create an environment of sharing best practices, you might be able to pick up some things from Dean, from Tanya, from Bob, that might be of value to you? Okay? Now, on the flip side, do you think there's something you do really well that might be of value to them? Kind of a nice, even exchange, right? That's what we're trying to create. Back to our goals and objectives, we're trying to create this environment where you become introspective, and you say, what am I good at? Where could I use improvement? And then, how do I contribute to the team? And how do I get from the team so I can continue to increase my competencies so I can make more money so Tech Data can achieve their goals? That's really what we're here for. So we're going to be looking at these competencies: thinking and planning, listening, questioning, and then you all have been going through pretty extensive training programs, haven't you, on more effectively using tools to help you increase productivity? And so this is all part of a whole system that Tech Data has invested to continue to make you all more productive, in a sense, for you to make more money and for them to make more money. So for 1 minute, if you would, don't even think about this very long. Just put a dot in each of these 6 boxes where you think you are compared to the best. You know what the best should do, and then kind of put yourself relative to the best where you think you are, and just kind of connect the dots and see what it says to you. Now circle the number 1 that's costing you the most money. Circle what's costing you money. Now, one of your assignments between now and next week is whatever you circled, why don't you spend 5 minutes kind of describing to yourself where you are as it relates to that one competency. And now also put down 1 or 2 things you will commit to do as part of this entire process, where you are personally going to take responsibility for getting the most out of what's going to happen the next 6 to 8 weeks, so you can move that competency from wherever you are and bump it up 1, 1.5, 2 points so it doesn't keep costing you money. And if you would, review that with your manager and ask your manager how they can help you over the next 6 to 8 weeks take what may be one of your greatest weaknesses and turn it into one of your greatest strengths. It won't take a long time. It's the whole notion of focus. Identify where I am, focus on it, develop a plan, and develop a relationship with my manager to help me improve that competency to the point where not only is it not costing me money, but it goes from one of my weaknesses to one of my strengths.